delighted now to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, Rob Wilson MP, the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Civil Society. Since July this year, his responsibilities have moved from the Cabinet Office to the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. He was elected as Conservative MP for Reading East in 2005. Previously, he was the Shadow Minister for Higher Education and Opposition Whip, and also served as Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. His responsibilities as Minister for Civil Society include growing volunteering, social action, community action and philanthropy, creating conditions for a more independent sector, promoting social investment, supporting the creation of opportunities for young people to develop skills and to have a stake in society, and expanding the National Citizen Service. As I say, we're delighted, Minister, that you were able to join us today and very much look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Nick. I hope my microphone's on. I feel my life just flashed before my eyes with that introduction. But it's great to be here, and thanks to Paris Smith for organising this event today. And it's great to be back in Southampton, particularly at Southampton Football Club, who I know have got a big game against Inter Milan tonight. Any of you going? Good, excellent. A few extra fans in. Also, it gives me the chance to mention the fantastic Saints Foundation, who do an enormous amount in the local area, both for young and old people. It's also a pleasure to see so many people from a range of different areas of culture, sports and arts with us today, from the city and indeed from further afield. As Nick mentioned, just as Southampton Football Club moved grounds a few years ago, I've recently moved from the Cabinet Office, taking Office of Civil Society with me, to a beautiful new stadium at the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. And as the Minister for Civil Society, I'm absolutely delighted that we've made that move. There are significant positives to come out of that move. It means that we have the opportunity to really expand our horizons and look at opportunities to increase our impact on the ground. So there are great synergies to be had there. And in the Office for Civil Society, we believe that the country will be stronger if we as citizens have more of a role and responsibility to improve our own lives, the communities that we share and the public services that we use. We know that charities and community groups are founded out of a passion and belief in helping others and to do good. Sometimes that passion is born out of tragedy. And I know you've just heard from James and Sarah about their inspiration to honour their daughter Ellie Jane's memory and to help others. I have to say, though, few actually managed to build a paediatric A&E, so that's an incredibly exciting project. And as you know, the government is behind you and match funding the financial input into that. But I want to encourage more people to get involved and to work together to improve our communities, whether that's giving of their time or indeed giving of their money. The opportunity to influence the world around you, to feel connected and to be able to make a contribution, these run through the idea of building a bigger, stronger society. A huge amount of inspiring work is already undertaken by charities, communities and social enterprises. However, it's also true that levels of charitable giving and volunteering have remained stable over the last year. So the voluntary sector must retain the trust of the public, and particularly where we're talking and asking about people to give money, it needs to effectively self-regulate to continue to maintain and grow levels of giving. It must be ready to reform and to adapt to the changing giving environment and the expectations of donors. As Minister for Civil Society, I'm keen to provide the right framework for this to happen. Over the last 18 months or so, we've seen some really poor fundraising practices, and that has been exposed in the media, and there has been a resulting decline in public trust. And it is really quite unfortunate the actions of a very few large fundraising charities have tarnished a sector which generally consists of dedicated and well-run organisations. So now is the time to put that right. I want to see the sector take collective responsibility for safeguarding your own reputation and your long-term sustainability. And that must include support for the new fundraising regulator. And I know that you've had the opportunity this morning to hear from Stephen Dunmore. The fundraising regulator now has the responsibility for investigating and adjudicating complaints, as well as maintaining and updating the fundraising code of practice. The regulator will be the complaints body that the public can turn to. It won't be alone though. Everybody will be working together. The Charity Commission, the Information Commissioner and the sector itself will be getting behind the regulator and supporting it through the levy and through respecting the forthcoming fundraising preference service. And I'm pleased to see that the fundraising regulator has already signed memorandums of understanding with its statutory partners. It's consulted the sector on the practical details of the fundraising preference service as well. Now, these are really quite important steps in upholding public trust, and I look forward to reviewing that progress early next year. Now, last year, this conference heard from the Charity Commission Chairman, William Shawcross. And the Charities Act 2016 gives the Charity Commission the powers it needs to do its job properly. And this followed recommendations that we received as government from the National Audit Office. Strengthening the Commission's ability to tackle abuse and mismanagement was supported by 83% of the public and 92% of charities. The powers are necessary to deal with a tiny minority bent on abusing charitable status. But I don't see my role as just making sure that the regulatory framework is robust and fit for the sector in the 21st century. I also want to ensure the sustainability of the sector and to help small local organisations that have a vital role in helping other people so that they become much more resilient. Whilst small organisations make up 97% of all registered charities in the UK, much of the media coverage that we all see seems to be about the big guys. It ignores what the vast majority are doing day in, day out to serve their own local communities. And it ignores the energy, the commitment and the expertise that small and local charities bring. That's why I want to get the message out today about our plans for a local Charities Day on the 16th of December. This will be a real celebration of local charities and community groups, raising their profile to help them to get the recognition that they actually deserve. As part of these plans, leading up to the day, we've provided funding to boost local giving's Grow Your Tenor to match donations from the public. We want to encourage more giving because we want to help charities to improve the lives of more people. So we'll be providing match funding for a bespoke fundraising campaign by Local Giving on Local Charities Day 2. And I'd encourage as many people as possible to get involved, donating and raising vital funds. I've seen firsthand the tenacity, the inventiveness and the ability to adapt to change of civil society organisations. I also know that there's more to do to help improve skills for raising the funds that they need to do the great work that they undertake. So we're helping small charities to get the training they need to fundraise more effectively. Our Small Charities Fundraising Training Programme earlier this year provided more than 1,000 training places. And today I'm pleased to announce that we're investing in a further package of fundraising training. It'll provide a series of expert-led workshops across the country in the weeks running up to Local Charities Day, as well as a whole range of learning sessions on Local Charities Day itself. We hope that this training will help charities to raise more funds for the vital work that they do, and I encourage small local charities and community organisations to sign up and get involved. So I have a very clear goal. I want to support the important work that you do and the people that you help. I want to do this by seeing a more independent, self-regulating and sustainable charity and social enterprise sector. A sector that can access grants, loans, philanthropy and earned income without being dependent on the state. A sector that has the public's confidence and knows its own worth. Charities are an essential part of the fabric of this country. They deliver services in places government simply can't get to and sometimes can't even go. I want us to continue to work together so that nobody is left behind and that we build a bigger, stronger society that I know that we all want to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We're now going to have some questions. We did ask delegates if they wanted to raise any questions in advance, and we have a couple, so we'll deal with those first, if that's all right.
Hello, my name's Carol Elliott and I work for Age UK Portsmouth. We are a small local charity helping older people in Portsmouth. One of the things that we're currently involved with is a pilot project around personal budgets for older people, and we're working in conjunction with the Integrated Commissioning Programme. We are also in the process of developing a team of personal assistants who could be hired to support people through the personal budget process, enabling us to be able to reduce employment burdens on the person themselves. However, with the ever-growing call on our services to support adult and social care, seed funding has pretty much been impossible to find. So that the voluntary sector can immediately better support government remits, can the Minister tell us if the government has any plans to better resource the voluntary sector directly rather than funds transferring through block contracts?
So firstly, let me say thank you to Age UK Portsmouth for all the great work you do with older people and supporting older people in the Portsmouth area. I'm always impressed when I go and see Age UK, and I've been to see many around the country. But you're right, there are obviously new opportunities for Age UK and also other charities, and you want to make the most of it. And we really want to try and support that as government. So what we're developing is a mixed economy of funding, ranging from obviously the grants that we continue to do, encouraging foundations and philanthropy to support local charities, but also through social investment, social impact bonds, and a range of other things as well. Because we don't think there's a sort of one size fit to every sort of bit of funding that a charity is going to want. So we want to provide as many opportunities across the piece as we possibly can. And that's why we set up something called the Access Foundation, which we invested £60 million in, which has been topped up to £100 million. So I don't know if you've looked at that as a possible avenue to try and get some funding, but that's certainly one. We are supporting innovation for older people. We opened a £4 million grant fund. Funnily enough, it's just closed, but I know a number of Age UK organisations did actually bid for funds. We haven't announced the results of that yet because it's only just closed. So we are doing a number of things exactly for the reasons that you've said. We want to make sure that local organisations that are being proactive, innovating, can find sources of income to make sure that they can get off the ground and do the things they want to achieve.
Hello, I'm Liz Donegan, Citizens Advice Southampton, a small local charity part of the National Citizens Advice Network. We support 7,500 people in the city every year with advice, information and guidance. I wonder, Minister, if you can give your view on whether you feel the increased propensity of local authorities and other local public bodies moving from grant funding arrangements for their local small charities to contracts, when those charities are providing services that very much work in partnership with them and support their strategic aims. And if you think that that is a good use of resources of those small local charities to be involved in large-scale public contracting and procurement arrangements and all that brings, and the use of public funding from local authorities, etc., who spend quite a lot of resources in that activity.
I'm not here to criticise local authorities. We all know that local authorities are under pressure, like all elements of government spending at the moment. There is pressure on everything, including my own Office of Civil Society. But what I would say is, just to build on the last answer about trying to have a mixed economy of different types of funding that charities can exit. One of the things that I'm trying to help charities do is to navigate the contract side of things much more effectively and make it easier for them. And there will be some announcements coming up in the not too distant future about that. But we also have something called the Commissioning Academy. I don't know how many of you in the room have been involved in that, but it's designed to really equip senior leaders from all parts of the public sector to really tackle these challenges and know how to go about getting contracts and succeeding contract bids in the best possible way. So we're trying to support you so that you can get those contracts, even if you might find them in some cases a bit bureaucratic. I can tell you, even in the grants area, some of the grants are pretty bureaucratic these days because of the amount of paperwork you have to go through, and sometimes you have to do that for some fairly small grants. So I don't want to say there's a right or wrong way. It really is a situation where the charity itself has to find the right thing, that the right type of funding for their organisation.
Alex Lockrane from the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance. I've got a question for you, Minister, and also your regulator. One for Stephen, please. Have you mapped what success will look like when you have embedded that culture change that you're after? And hopefully, bearing in mind your comments about the vast majority of charities echoed by the Minister, hopefully it won't take us long to prove to you that the culture change is embedded. And at that point, Minister, will you then write the record and tell through the media that actually their trust can be restored in charities? Thank you very much.
If you were to look on our website, in our business plan, we have a whole range of key performance indicators which are about measuring our success in the first instance next summer at the end of the first year. But more broadly, I think success will be achieved when there are far less media articles about poor fundraising practice, when the volume of complaints about fundraising reduces, when charities themselves, and I said this in my presentation this morning, charities themselves are well down the road of taking responsibility for a cultural change in fundraising. And I did say, and you've echoed it, that not all charities are guilty of fundraising malpractice, and we clearly recognise that. But the fundraising malpractice which has occurred does affect the whole sector. I hope to be around for a while yet, and I hope that at the point where I leave the fundraising regulator, which may be towards the end of next year, we will have seen a real step change in the way that fundraising is carried out. And that on the back of that, both, and I don't think this is just the responsibility of government or the minister, it is up to charities themselves to speak out and give the positive stories about what they're doing. I think individual charities do that very effectively, actually. But collectively, I think the charitable sector has not responded as positively to the things that have gone wrong over the past year in fundraising as it might have done. So I think there's a shared responsibility there between the regulator and charities in a year's time to be able to paint a much more positive picture of what's happening.
Firstly, I would like to publicly, because I don't get the chance very often publicly to do it, is to thank Stephen and his team for the way that they have responded and set up the new fundraising regulator so quickly. And you know, it is already looking a very robust organisation, so I'm very pleased to see that. But I would say that it isn't my regulator, it is a self-regulator. So I don't have any more influence over it than people in this room in many ways. But I will judge the success of it, as far as the government looking from the outside is concerned, on the basis, firstly, that the whole sector gets behind it and backs it as its self-regulator. And that means it needs to have the levy that it's paid, supported and paid. It needs to have charities signing up to it. It needs to make sure it has a functioning fundraising preference service so that the public have the option to get out of all the direct mail or all the telephone calls that they're getting that caused all those problems a year or 18 months ago. So success will be really judged by whether it is backed by the sector. And if it is backed by the sector and it is effective, then public trust won't be a problem, and the government will be speaking up regularly, supporting both the self-regulator and the other the regulators that we are responsible for behind it.
Thank you. I think we just have one more question, and then I think we need to break then.
Hello, I'm Ruth Marriott. I'm from Social Care in Action. Excuse me. We deliver a number of care services in and across Hampshire, and we work with local partners, including the local authority and health and local voluntary and community sector. I was interested to hear, in terms of the SIBs, how the government intends to support smaller local charities who may be of a fairly large size on a local level, but comparatively won't be against larger organisations and national voluntary sector organisations who've got a bigger opportunity and greater benefit in looking at those kind of contracts, which in theory would make it quite difficult for smaller voluntary community sector to be able to put together bids. We're interested and have talked on a local level about developing consortia approaches to be able to do that, so that we can keep money at a local level in the local communities. Could you tell us how the central government intends to support the development of SIBs as a real route to investment in the sector, and ensure that the risk isn't put on the smaller and community voluntary sector rather than the local authority or bigger organisations?
Okay, yes, I can. So we've put in place, as I said, the Access Foundation, which will fund through grants capacity building. In terms of advice and support, we've invested £1 million in the Blavatnik School at Oxford University, which is a sort of semi-independent source of support to any organisations that are thinking of getting involved in that. We've funded a Life Chances Fund to the tune of £80 million to make sure that local organisations have the chance to go in with their local authority if they've got good schemes to bid for this. And we've just opened that first phase of bidding. We've had a really strong reaction, so I'd urge you to take a look at that. But I mean, the thing about SIBs is that the risk, frankly, sits with the social investor, because it's a payment by results system. At the front end, the social investor comes in. That could be a range of different organisations. Then organisations like yours, or even sometimes private sector organisations, will sit in the middle, or social enterprises, to provide the service. The risk doesn't sit there; it sits with the funder, and at the back end, the local authority or the government then pays by results. So I don't see that there's a huge risk for social enterprises and charities in terms of getting involved in this space, particularly as we are providing funding to help build the capacity for those organisations that want to do it.
Thank you very much.